Good morning, everyone. My name is Stuart Fry, and I run an independent calf consultancy business in the southwest of England. We really need to start thinking about baby calves as we would about baby humans, offering a dry, draft-free bedroom, a clean, light and airy living room, and a well-drained kitchen, offering all the nutrients a baby calf needs, including fresh water. This can be achieved in a variety of ways, as you can see from the pictures above. I'd like to add drainage to the ventilation bubble on this page, as they're both very important to reduce the moisture load in the pen, which will help reduce the disease pressure on the calves. Good ventilation will reduce air moisture, but won't help if the bedding is sodden. But good drainage will reduce floor moisture, but again, won't help if the air is stale. Calves should be housed not more than 7 days apart in birth date. This is more important than group size, which will probably be dictated by the building, calving policy, etc. However, if the pen holds 10 and only 5 are born that week, only put 5 in it. Pen structure. The important parts are really the drainage. We would like a 1 in 20 slope on the floor and solid panels between the bedroom area of the pens. The calves do need 1 square meter of bedding space and 1.5 square meters of living room kitchen space, making it 2.5 square meters per calf to 8 weeks of age. The first step in reducing bacterial load is solid panels. As you can see from the diagram, if you can put solid panels into a height of 1.2 meters in the bedroom area of the house, this can reduce airborne bacteria by 20%, which is quite a good start. These plans that you see here are freely available on the Bonanza calf website and come from a shed that I was involved in building 13 years ago, and we'll see more pictures of this later. If you're considering changing an existing shed, it may not always be possible to get ideal spaces or ideal falls, but try and get as near as you can. Make pens easily accessible machinery. Make it as easy as possible to clean out, and then it will get done. Do not bed bedded areas with calves in the house, because they don't want them getting wetter. We want everything as dry as we possibly can. Follow the disinfectant protocols, which Alison would talk about, and when you wash pens, allow the time to dry. These are a slide looking at nesting score, and obviously number 1 is totally unacceptable. The calf is cold and miserable, and if you follow the plans already mentioned, you're only bedding 1 square meter per calf. So a nesting score of 3, which is what we want to aim at, might actually use less straw bedding than the whole house. Can you kneel on the bed and not get wet knees? It is possible, and it should be aimed for. If you combine a nesting score of 3 with solid walls, you could save a fortune in drugs and vet visits by reducing airborne bacteria by half. Again, doesn't cost a lot, easy to do. These days, house size will probably depend a lot on the calving pattern. The shed should be designed to suit the system on the farm. Block calvers will have a lot more calves on the floor for a shorter period of time than the all-rounders. Drainage is the best start to ventilation. Baby calves do not produce heat like a group of ruminants. So ventilation systems that is designed to work for older cattle won't work for calves. Very important when you're someone trying to sell you a shed, because they tend to use older ones. Remember, it's easier to warm up a shed than it is to cool it down. If it's too warm in the beginning, it's always too warm. And what is the farm policy? If all the calves are going to be born in August, you will need a different design to all the calves being born in February. One size does not fit all. Remember, a shed cannot adjust for conditions, but you can. So if it's cold, feed more. Consider putting jackets on. Bed up better. If it's hot, open doors and vents, remembering to shut them again before it gets cold at night. In short, manage the environment to the best of your ability. Don't just build it and stand back and admire it. This is the shed that was mentioned earlier. David feeds 4 litres of colostrum at birth, followed by 1 day of colostrum transition milk. Calves then receive 800 grams a day of transformer until day 10, when they move on to 800 grams of Shine Original. The plans are freely available, as I said, on the Bonanza website. These pens were designed for 5 calves per pen because that suited an all-year-round calving pattern for a 400 cow herd. It worked for the farm at the time. We also designed it to be a bit wider than the front end loader, and we had a reinforced concrete back wall to make cleaning out as easy as possible so that it gets done. This is the shed again. There's 10 years between these two pictures, 12 years between these two pictures, sorry. I'm not looking as good, but the pen is still looking really well. So it's worth building it properly so it can be cleaned properly in the first place. South facing, southeast facing, try and get some sunshine into the front of the area, as ultraviolet light is a great disinfectant. The overhanging roof at the back is mainly to prevent drafts, but it does allow us to store straw, which insulates the back wall and makes bedding up much easier from the rear. The pen size is 4 inches wider than the digger bucket for easy cleaning of pens. It's light and airy without drafts, solid barriers between the pens. The sleepers retain the bedding where it's needed, stopping it being dragged into the living room area. Remember, cows do 70% of the peeing and pooing while being fed or waiting to be fed. If this goes straight down a drain, that will need to leave 30% in the straw to build up the bugs. The cost of this, in the first 10 years, it cost £7.50 per calf, including interest. That cost was 55 pence per calf a year, and mortality was from 0 to 8 weeks was less than 1.5% over a 10-year period. 0 to 3 months, we did have a mortality rate of 2.9%. This was due to pneumonia in the follow-on shed, something that we have to tackle soon. As I said, one size does not fit all. Hutches might be a financially viable alternative if you don't want to build a shed or haven't got something suitable for conversion. Remember, they are just a plastic cover, but most come with windows or vents which can be opened or closed when appropriate. So please manage them. Next slide, Elizabeth. Oh, yeah, sorry. Despite the best colostrum and shed management, problems will arise. So ask yourself, what is it? Scar test kits are much cheaper than the vet. You learn how to use one. Alison will talk about it later. How do I treat it? This is where the vet might come in. If you don't know yourself, where did it come from? Probably the most important question. You have to deal with what you have, but you don't want it back again. It doesn't take a genius or a consultant to understand that a calf who gets a poor start in life will never fulfill its potential. They are the future of your herd. Please look after them. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Stuart's slides clearly highlight that calves can be reared very well in a variety of different housing types. However, the day-to-day management of the house climate and conditions is critical in ensuring morbidity and mortality remains low. I really like the retention timbers in David Dibble's shed to keep the bedding back, and it's a real cheap way, an easy way to keep calves dry, warm, and minimising that bedding wastage. So now I will pass the screen on to Alison Clark from Progiene Dairy Hygiene. Alison is business unit manager for Progiene, and she's been instrumental in leading the company for the last 10 years since its set up. Previous to that, she has worked in the dairy hygiene industry for more than 25 years, which clearly shows in her expertise on the subject matter. Using suitable disinfectant in calf housing is critical, which I'm sure Alison will cover, especially in the UK dairy industry due to increasing disease pressure associated with the larger herd sizes seen on farm over here and more all year round calving systems in play. Keeping disease pressure at the most minimal level should not be overlooked when maximising calf health. On this, over to you, Alison.
Hello. Thank you, Selina, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I'll be covering the basics of biosecurity and basically decoding our drum labels and understanding disinfectants, but also unravelling what biosecurity actually is. So biosecurity and the measures taken to reduce the spread of disease at farm level, regionally, countrywide and worldwide. It's about assessing the risks and implementing measures to reduce the risks. We've all just been through COVID-19, and our biosecurity measures that we implemented at times were social distancing, hand hygiene, wearing face masks, etc. So we all understand about biosecurity since that pandemic. At dairy farm, biosecurity isn't a new topic, but it's one that's integral to maintaining herd welfare and performance as we try to reduce disease incidence, reduce antimicrobial usage, improve animal welfare, and reduce the resources, that's the time and money required, to tackle the disease outbreaks on farm, and of course to comply to audit standards. We undertook a biosecurity survey in December 21, and we surveyed some of our customers and asked them about what they did on farm. 78% of the respondents said that they had some sort of disease pressure in the last 2 years that caused them to implement some sort of biosecurity practice to control that disease pressure. When we asked them about the pathogens that they saw, and that's bacteria or viruses, etc., we asked them what was their main concerns on the farm. TB, 41% said that they had experienced TB, 48% said that they'd experienced Johne's, 42% had experienced E. coli, and 15% had experienced Salmonella. Those were more general questions about the dairy herd, but we then asked them more specific questions about calf pathogens, etc. And as we know that rotavirus, coronavirus, E. coli, cryptosporidium and coccidiosis are the most prevalent causes of scour in calves. An easy way to check whether the calf scour is caused by a nutritional scour or an infectious scour is to use a calf scour test kit, which is a 10-minute test, and it's very easy to take a fecal sample and do that on farm at calf side. It's all about knowing what you're dealing with, but boot dipping can be the first line of defense on farm if managed correctly. So when we surveyed our farmers, we asked them about boot dipping, and 80% of the farmers or our respondents said that they had a boot dip on farm, and 55% of them said that they don't require every visitor to boot dip on farm. It can be quite embarrassing in that instance, asking someone who's a regular visitor to the farm to dip their boots every time they come onto the farm. But it shouldn't be. It should be just taken for granted that if there's a boot dip there, we expect someone to use it. Of the farmers providing boot dips, farmers 62% were changing it after 15 plus uses, and we'll come on to how often, frequency of changing and concentration of the disinfectant in the foot bath later in the talk. But ideally, disinfection should be taking place at several points around the farm, especially the entrance and the exit to the farm, so that we're preventing disease coming onto the farm and preventing disease leaving the farm too. But ideally, vehicles would be disinfected, calf housing, the farm vehicles themselves, machinery stores and feed stores, the cow accommodation and the milking equipment would all be disinfected. But the main priorities are the entrance and exits of the farms. We need to minimise entry points onto the farm if we can, provide active signage so that everyone knows that they need to, the expectation is for you to dip your boots and do that in a proper way using the equipment provided. Obviously, to use the foot bath, use any hose that's provided and a brush to make sure that the disinfectant covers all of the boots, and to ask people to comply if they're not dipping their boots because they're wearing the wrong footwear, to cover their boots at least, and to also ask farm staff to dip their wellies and to wear clean overalls and clothing. This foot dip is a particularly good one, providing an audit sticker where that can be completed to show who filled the foot bath, what product was used, how many times the boot dipper has been used. We would recommend 15 times and then it's changed. You can also add the concentration of the product and when it's next needing to be changed. That audit sticker can be removed and applied to the record sheet that's shown in the slide, and that can provide a really robust tool of knowing when the disinfectant was added and what concentration, etc. This is a particularly good foot bath in that it's nice and shallow, so anyone could use it. We would provide a brush with that to apply the product to the whole of the welly, and also it has a non-slip surface so that it's nice and safe for any visitors on the farm or operators on the farm. But how do you choose the disinfectant that goes in the foot bath? Not every disinfectant can be used for every application. And as you can see from the chart on the right-hand side, we've listed a number of disinfectants, but not all of them are suitable for cocci and crypto. Not all of them are suitable for TB. General orders is a DEFRA approval for Salmonella and E. coli. All of the products that we mention here can be used for floors and walls, but they can't all be used for feeding utensils. Some products are very residual in the way that they're manufactured. They might have an oil base, and applying those products to feeding utensils could lead to taint and obviously be quite off-putting for calves when they're feeding. So we want to use a product that doesn't leave any taint, but we do want to disinfect vehicles, and all of those products can be used for vehicles coming on and off the farm and on your boot dip. Another way to help you choose the right disinfectant is to use our decision tree on the left-hand side. So if we were thinking about TB, for instance, we would look down the decision tree and ask ourselves, do we have a problem with TB? If the answer is yes, we'd follow the right-hand side of the decision tree, and then maybe ask whether coccidiosis and cryptosporosis was an issue. And if it was, then we'd go down the left-hand side of the decision tree on that question, and that would lead us to using Coccicure for that issue on farm. If cocci and crypto wasn't an issue, we'd follow the right-hand side of the decision tree and we'd end up with Tibicure as our product of choice. So you can see that from the decision tree and from the table, it's nice and easy. But I've mentioned DEFRA approved disinfectants quite regularly throughout this talk, and a DEFRA approved disinfectant is one that has efficacy against the particular disease that you're trying to avoid. So if we're thinking about TB, for instance, and we want to check that our product is indeed DEFRA approved, which means it has efficacy, and DEFRA actually dictate how to use this product and at what strength, we'd go to the DEFRA website using this link that we have here, and all the products that are DEFRA approved, all products in the UK, are listed on there in alphabetical order. So this is an example where I've gone to check whether Coccicure is DEFRA approved, and this is what crops up. It has a DEFRA approval for each of the 5 DEFRA orders, and yes, it's there for TB, and I would need to use that at 1 part product to 15 parts water. Now you can see there's a different number there for each DEFRA order. So if we were looking at foot and mouth, it would be 1 part product to 1,000 parts water. So it varies according to what you're trying to actually achieve. So it is worth looking at the DEFRA website, but also what we've tried to do with our labels is to make it easy to understand, because these 1 part to 15 parts aren't very clear on what that actually means on farm. So what the 1 part product to 15 parts of water, and so that's 1 part product plus 15 parts of water, so 16 parts all in all, is actually means 6.6 litres of product per 100 litres of water. So we've unravelled that and tried to make that easy to understand, rather than the DEFRA website, which actually complicates things somewhat. If we look at general orders on the label, DEFRA recommending 1 part product to 50 parts of water. That's actually 2 litres of product to 100 litres of water. So once we know how much product we need to use, we can get the concentration right in the foot bath, in our backpack sprayer, etc., and make sure that it's fit for purpose. Another way that we've helped unravel the mystery or decoding the label is to supply a chemical calculator on our website, and the link to that is on this slide. For instance, if you had 250 litres of water to use and you wanted to know how much chemical you needed to use for TB, for instance, you would pop your 250 litres into the box, and it would calculate that for you and show you that for TB you'd need 16.66 litres of chemical in your 250 litres of water. We have lots of cleaning protocols available from cleaning utensils to cleaning boots to cleaning vehicles and cleaning buildings, etc. But the general points to take away from all of them is that we need to remove all bedding and organic matter before we disinfect. And disinfectant doesn't work on a dirty surface. We need to remove any manure and apply detergent, and this would be the same if we were cleaning calf utensils. For instance, we need to apply detergent and use mechanical action, that's a brush or a sponge, for instance, to actually remove the biofilm that might be on the equipment. If you think about biofilm that and feeding your having a dog a bowl full of water, for instance, the slime, the green slime that builds up in that dog bowl is in fact biofilm, and biofilm traps the pathogens, it entraps bacteria, encapsulates the bacteria, and it makes the bacteria very difficult to reach. So your disinfectant can't then be effective if there's a biofilm or any manure or any organic matter. So once we've used the detergent and mechanical action, we need to rinse that off, apply the correct choice of disinfectant at the right dilution, leave that to dry, and then review our results. Knowing our pathogens is really useful, so knowing what we're up against, because that will affect your choice of disinfectant, and try to work with materials that are less likely to form biofilms. For instance, stainless steel is less likely to form a biofilm than a plastic surface, for instance. So in summary, biosecurity really pays off. Think about reducing the risk of disease coming onto the farm and also leaving the farm and the spread within the farm. And think about the practical steps you can take to control the disease spread. Thank you very much.
So last to speak today is Dr. Amanda Dunn from Highbury Holsteins. She will talk us through her calf rearing protocols on her family dairy farm in Northern Ireland. As a bit of background, Amanda finished her PhD thesis in 2016, looking at colostrum quality and calf immunity. So I'm sure her talk will be extremely insightful. So with no further ado, I'll pass back on to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Selina. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So I've worked for Bonanza Calf Nutrition for the last 7 years now. But this morning, I'm just going to run you through some of the calf rearing practices on my own farm. Okay, so a bit of background first then. The dairy farm's run by my husband and his father Hugh and brother Adam. We milk 130 Holstein Friesian cows. On average, they're lasting about 4 lactations, calving down to 24 months old. I get the job of rearing the calves. We're a tight autumn block calving herd. We're calving down about 60% of the calves in September, and we're getting finished up in November. So September does be a very busy month for us, but it's good in that you get a nice uniform batch of calves at the end of it, and the calves are within a nice age range whenever you're putting them into groups. We generally keep about 40 replacement heifer calves, and these are done to sex semen just to try and reduce the number of Friesian bulls that we get. And then everything else is put to Aberdeen Angus. We've had less than 2% mortality in the calves this year so far, so we're pleased with that. So moving on then. Just to where it all starts, calving time. We've got 8 individual calving pens. So what happens is cow's moved into the calving pen when she's almost ready to calve. Calf hits the ground, the cow's milked right away, no matter what time of day or night it is. The cows are watched on cameras, and the cow is milked in the pen using a portable milker. The calf's allowed to stay in the pen about 20 minutes until it gets licked dry. And then, as you can see in the picture in the right, it gets transported down to the calf house as soon as possible after birth. We are quite strict in that the calving pens are cleaned out regularly, just because this is the first place the calf comes into contact with the environment, and it's been in the sterile womb. So you want to have this as clean as possible, just to prevent any infection from the get-go. So this is the calf house. The calf house was built especially for calves about 6 years ago. Previously, we reared the calves in a house that was shared by older cattle. It was small individual pens, not easily accessible to be cleaned out with machinery. So we were having a bit of bother with pneumonia and stuff. So since we moved down to the new calf house 6 years ago, we've noticed much better calf health. The calf house, as you can see, it's an open front. It's 6 bays long, and each bay is split into 2 pens of calves. And we've used double cladding to reduce draft, but not airflow. We've got a 1 in 20 slope in the floor for drainage, just to get nice dry beds. It is machinery accessible, just to make life a bit handier and easy cleaning. It makes it more likely that it'll be cleaned out more often. And we always keep a foot dip at the door and beside the hose, where everyone's boots on entry to the calf house can be washed and then dipped. And the foot dip is renewed on a regular basis, just to keep everything tip top. So we are regimental on the colostrum. All calves get colostrum from their own mums where possible whenever they're milked in the pen. If she has enough, they get all of that, and if not, we do have a supply kept in the freezer in those flat pack bags. So all calves get 4 litres of colostrum within an hour of birth. Firstly, we try them with the teat on the bottle, and whatever they drink, and then they get topped up with the tube. This just makes it a bit easier for feeding at the next feed. I think if they've been accustomed to sucking the teat, they'll drink a little better on the second feed. At the next milking, then the calf is offered 2 to 3 litres of colostrum from the second milking via the teat bucket. Some will drink it, some won't. Not overly concerned if they don't drink it, as they've got their first feed of colostrum, which is the most important. So we're satisfied enough when they've got that. So then, first week of life, they're all individually penned within their group pen. We find this quite good in that we just split the group pen that they're going to be in up with hurdles and make sure they're all drinking well, and then we just take the hurdles out and they're in the pen they're going to be in. So it means they're not stressed by moving twice. All calves get a calf jacket, and these are put on when the calf's dry enough. And if necessary, then we've got heat lamps that we can add in as well if it is cold. But generally, we're not too bad. September's normally mild enough, and the calves are fed individually using the peach teat bucket then. And so once they've had their 2 feeds of colostrum, 2 to 3 feeds of colostrum, then they're moved on to their transition milk or transformula for 12 to 14 days. The reason we always never miss out this step is just for gut development and try and prevent scars in this first 2 weeks. And the cows do get a rotavirus and coronavirus vaccine at 8 weeks prior to calving. So we like to make the most of that as well. And that boosts the colostrum with the antibodies they need against those common scars in the first couple of weeks. So just lining that gut with transition milk, we find that very useful. And then from 2 weeks to 5 weeks, then they get milk replacer, 4 litres morning and evening. And then from 5 to 10 weeks, they get very gradually weaned down. Then they go on to once a day feeding and weaned at 10 weeks. It is a very simple system we use. There's nothing fancy about it. This year we invested in a milk cart with a pump. It holds 160 litres of milk, and this just makes life a wee bit easier, less buckets to carry. We've got a mixer tap set at 40 degrees, just so that the temperature of the milk is consistent every time. We use, as you can see in the right-hand picture, just compartmentalised 6 teak feeders that are hung on the gate. The height at which they're hung is important so that the calves are reaching up so that their grooves open, and they're fed at 8 o'clock in the morning and 6 p.m. in the evening every day, and consistency is key. Any changes can stress the calves, so we try to keep things as simple as possible and consistent as possible as we can. Then hygiene. We heard a great talk there from Alison on Progiene, and we are strict on hygiene when it comes to the feeders. Sometimes it takes longer to do the washing up as it does to feed the calves, but I think it is worth it. The feeders are washed after every feed, dipped in acid, and then left on the rack to rest and dry until the next feed. Then in terms of our own hygiene, with our gloves and our clothes and our boots, it is just important to keep ourselves clean too, that you're not spreading disease from one pen to the other. The youngest calves are always fed first for this reason. Then group size. Stuart touched on this, of the importance of group size, and I think this is definitely important. Having 6 calves in a pen, it just helps you to monitor them, especially when they're drinking. If you've got any slow drinkers or any holding back, you can identify them as being sick more quickly. And as well, we've got, as you can see in the right hand picture, we have the solid barriers between the pens, and this works really well in that it keeps the house a little bit warmer, prevent drafts going up and down the house, and as well for the spread of disease reason. We use straw bedding. Every day they're bedded with a light dusting of fresh straw, just to act as a bug barrier, and it's a great insulator. And as Stuart has covered, nesting is very important, making sure their knees are out of sight and that you're not feeding them to keep themselves warm, that they have a nice bed to lie in. Dry feed, we've got meal available to them from the very beginning. We start with very little and replace it. If you don't do this, we find they just won't eat it. It has to be fresh. It's available all the time, and we start with the left-hand picture where there's troughs initially, and as they get older, about 8 weeks old, they're grouped into 12 calves per pen, and they've got access then to the ad-lib feeder. Again, it's labour saving, you're not carrying meal, and the calves have got ad-lib access to the meal, which is very important in the transition from milk to solids. As I said, fresh meal and clean water is always available. We've got the little ad-lib water drinking bowls. This is great, but it is important that they're cleaned out on a daily basis, as there can often be feces and things in these, so you don't want them ingesting any feces, and needed to be available. Then you can see the blue barrels in the picture. Then we fill these with straw for eating straw. It's just to discourage them from eating straw from the ground. And you can see in the left-hand picture, they do go at it once the straw is put in. They do eat quite a bit of it. So again, for rumen development, it is important, and that you don't want them eating it off the floor in case they ingest any dung or anything like that as well. Then calf coats, I've said, once the calves dry, the calf coat gets put on. The calf's lower critical temperature is about 15 degrees, so it is important to keep them warm. The shed's not a real warm house, but it's important that the calf coats are cleaned in between uses. So you can see in the left-hand picture there, they've been washed. We've got a washing machine in the little outhouse that we use especially for that, and then they're hung out to dry. And that was just a particularly sunny day before September arrived, and got opportunity to get them dried, and they do be washed at about 60 degrees, just in case there's any disease like crypto and things can't be killed under 60 degrees. So that's just one to look out for. Then the beef calves, they're all Angus, as I said. They're treated the same as heifer calves in terms of their colostrum intake. They're in the same house as the heifer calves, so we need to just be wary that these have to be looked after as well. Aberdeen Angus is very easy calving. They're good drinkers, and they fetch a good price in the market, and they're sent to market about 3 to 4 weeks old. So we do generally end up with about 100 of these. So then, just in summary, with regards having a low mortality, I think the main important things are to remember when it comes to calves is attention to detail, patience and consistency. Getting that calf off to the best start and just being patient with it until it drinks its full amount. At the beginning, they're slow to train, but once they get going, they're much easier. But it's just important taking that time. Good colostrum management and transition milk is paramount. You have to get the colostrum in just to help to get their own immune system going. Biosecurity and good hygiene practice is important, and keeping calves as warm as possible with a clean airflow in a draft-free environment in their small groups works well. And I think no more than one change per week. It equates to less stress and less disease. So thank you very much for listening, and we welcome any questions.
Thanks, Amanda. I really like your picture there of the makeshift calf barrow for transporting calves, and from the calving pen to the rearing pens. And your slides there, they really do complement Stuart and Alison's, and highlight that successful rearing outcomes are down to your attention to detail and the day-to-day management of the calves. And just to reiterate to everyone Amanda's point, that strong calves are produced through a combination of excellent colostrum and transition milk management, nutrition, housing, and minimal disease pressure, that it isn't just one factor in isolation. A couple of questions we have had sent in to start off the discussion. It's going to be more of a general question. I'd like to ask each presenter what they feel in regards to their specialism, what they believe is the most important aspect for successful calf rearing. So we heard from Amanda last, so I'll just go back to Amanda.
Yeah, so basically, calf rearing, I think it's a bit of a jigsaw. You have to have everything working in combination for it to be successful. If the colostrum, of course, is a very important one, you have to have the colostrum right. But then, if you've got given them the colostrum, but you're still giving them in, letting them lie in a wet bed and poor ventilation, you're still going to come under. They're still going to be under pressure. So having a good all rounder of all them things is definitely going to be successful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Amanda, Stuart and yourself, you mentioned thermoneutral zones in calves, and there being an additional requirement on the calves in terms of energy when temperatures consistently drop below 15 degrees. You evidently see a benefit in using calf jackets. Do you feed additional milk replacer? And if you do or don't, what are your reasons to either feeding more or less?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. No, so we don't feed any more milk powder, because generally where we are, it might be cold tomorrow, but it could be mild again the next day. So I find switching them about, it's not consistent. So we tend to just work with the jackets and a good bit of straw. And if it gets very cold, go with the heat lamps. Then we don't mess with the nutrition.
Okay, excellent. Alison, how is your microphone?
Let's see, is that working?
That's perfect. Yeah. So if
Right.
we can go back to you with the first question, What do you believe is the most important aspect for successful calf rearing in regards to your specialism?
I think Amanda nailed it in her talk. The consistency and attention to detail is very much, I think, a key.
Stuart?
Colostrum management is the most important thing, but if you get that right and you can put them into a good environment, then you're halfway there.
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree with you. There's a another question there, Stuart, that as soon as I've got you, I'll continue on. Barley and wheat harvests, they've been poor this season, limiting the supply and quality of straw as a byproduct. There is obviously a need for straw or hay as a feeding material, but on the subject of bedding, if there was a choice of other bedding materials, which in your opinion would be the next best thing to bed calves?
Well, straw is the best one because it's the best insulator by a long way. But I have seen calves bedded up on sawdust and on paper. But I would say if you're using them, don't stint just because they're really expensive. Make sure you bed up well.
And Alison, one last one for you. In terms of efficacy of different disinfectants, we have an attendant asking if peracetic acid and lime is suitable as a disinfectant for calf housing, and what are the pros and cons to these?
Lime and most bedding conditioners are great at absorbing any moisture, really great for that. Debatable on how effective they are as a disinfectant. There's no DEFRA approval for lime or bedding conditioners. The peracetic acid, you can get DEFRA approved peracetic acid. Peracetic acid is a great disinfectant if you're using your PPE correctly and wearing goggles and gloves, etc., and really good in the final rinse when you're cleaning utensils, etc., because it's not that great if it's used where there's an awful lot of biofilm in place. So if the surface is clean and you've used your detergent properly, then peracetic acid is great, no problem.
Excellent. Thanks. So from all of us to everyone having taken their time to attend today, we hope you have a lovely day, and if it isn't too early, a wonderful Christmas and a prosperous new year. Thank you very much.